Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Sync Up Podcast, your one-stop shop for all things OneDrive. OneDrive is the home for all of the files that you care about most, and we're here to take you behind the scenes to get the insights and the knowledge to make your experience and your users' experience better. My name is Stephen Rice, and I'm a Principal Product Manager on the OneDrive team, and as always, I'm joined by my fellow OneDrive co-host, Arvind Mishra.
Hello, everyone. I'm Arvind, and I'm also a Principal Product Manager on the OneDrive team. Today, we've got a great set of discussions and topics. Kicking things off, the OneDrive team just put on an event to showcase all the cool and interesting stuff that's already in or soon gonna be in customers' hands. Our event, titled OneDrive, the Future of File Management, featured a number of OneDrive's leaders demoing all kinds of cool stuff that we know our customers are gonna love. From the new interface on OneDrive Web to better ways to collaborate. We even showed off some pretty cool stuff for IT admins, I gotta say. But one of the most exciting things was the sneak peek that Jason gave the audience of Copilot and then the Photos AI features that are coming to OneDrive. So we're going to start off today's show with some behind the scenes interviews with Jason, Arwa, and Gaia, three of the presenters from the show. Second, in studio today, we're also going to be chatting with Sesha Mani, who was also a presenter at the event. We'll be going in depth with him about how OneDrive helps organizations to keep their data secure without impacting end user collaboration. I, for one, am excited to learn more in this area. I don't know about you, Stephen.
Absolutely. So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, Sesha?
Absolutely. First of all, folks, I'm very thrilled to be here. Stephen and Arvind, nice talking to you. I'm Sesha Mani. I'm the Partner Group Product Manager in the OneDrive and SharePoint team. Been in Microsoft for over 15 years now. Most of those times are with the SharePoint and OneDrive team. And also primarily around security and governance is my area of expertise, and brought in more and more functionalities here.
Yeah, I'm super excited. Sesha, the first time, I don't know if I consider this meeting you, but my mentor when I first started at Microsoft worked closely with you, and he had on his wall a poster of the ODSP auth team that had been like drawn by an artist. And I think you were one of the two PMs on that poster. And that was the first time I saw you at the company, like all 9 years ago.
Yeah, absolutely.
We saw him from afar.
Exactly.
It was years ago, absolutely. I actually started in the art team when I was started back in, I believe it was 2010, 2011, I believe, in the SharePoint team. It was such a small team at the time. But the problems are, what kept me in the team, and a lot of challenging things to take care of here.
So now, as usual, before we can get into the meat of the discussion, we have to have a little bit of fun with our icebreaker question. Sometimes these are serious, sometimes they're fun. So we're going to see how it goes. Arvind, we're going to do only one icebreaker question today. I don't know what it is. I'm a little bit nervous. What have you got for us?
No. It's always fun. Like I could see Sesha like getting very nervous over there. It's gonna be okay. We won't bite here.
Anything is fine, Arvind. Go for it.
Yeah. Okay, so here's the question, and I think like this is one I'm curious to hear from you as well, Stephen, on this. So all of us at some point have done some amount of coding or programming. Some of us have done it like way longer ago. I'm looking at myself. Sesha, this question is to you. What was the first language that you learned how to code in? And what was like something exciting that you built in that language? Don't say like hello world, but like what was something really cool that you were proud of that you built?
Great question, Arvind. Thanks for asking that. Now you're now taking me to my memory lane. Back in the days when I was doing my graduate studies, the first language really, Photon, is the language that I actually learned. And believe it or not, I built an expert systems using that language. And those days, think of it as neural networks like program. And really the program was helping to learn about historical Canadian farm conditions. And then you can give a given Canada location. It can tell you the prediction of what it's going to look like for the next 5 years. I was really proud of that. In fact, that got put it in a CD-ROM. Folks, CD-ROM, put it in the CD.
Yes, we've heard of that.
All the farmers, Canadian farmers, actually. That was my first language I learned and the product I built myself at the time.
That is incredible. Like for your first product that you built, like you got a CD pressing out of it. Fantastic. Now, Stephen, like take us down from there, please.
Yeah, mine is not nearly as interesting. I'm gonna go. I can't think of like the first thing I like productized. Because that probably was something at Microsoft. When I was starting out programming and coding, I was really interested in becoming a game developer. So this was in high school, and I've got some fun stories from that going back. But I didn't take any of the actual like official programming classes in high school. I skipped those for some reason. Like they just didn't work with my schedule. But I did take it was a weird like media programming class where it wasn't like basic programming, but we learned Python. And so technically Python was the first language I learned. It was, I think, the only class I've ever used it in, and I don't remember any of it now. But the thing I think I was most proud of is I built a really bad tic-tac-toe game. Was like my first real project. Super basic, like you populate a board, you tell it where you want to put in your X, and then the computer picks an O. But I didn't know how to do anything at the time. And so the computer just randomly picked an open location, which is not a good way to play tic-tac-toe. But I think that was the first real project I ever did that was like an end-to-end thing. What about you, Arvind?
That is pretty awesome. Okay, I'm going to take us down to the lowest level.
You can't use Hello World. You already said that.
Yeah, exactly.
So similar to your thing that you built, Steve, mine was also game related. Back when I grew up sort of coding, for those people out there, I only know BASIC. Like I learned how to code in BASIC. Back in the day, really popular games, if you've seen the old Infocom games like Zork and like those types of games, they were all text-based. So I programmed like a text-based game so that it was just like you were, crawling around a dungeon and it gave you a set of commands that you could, basically do. And then you would, depending on which one you picked, you would read, a bunch of stuff that I wrote that would happen to you. And so it was like, very, very basic, but I know we probably have a lot of readers or listeners out there that are like super into Zork back in the day. So if you are, please comment and say, give Zork some love. All right. That is enough ice breaking for today. Let's start with our first topic. Recently, the OneDrive team hosted an event titled OneDrive, the Future of File Management. And Stephen, I understand that you caught up with the presenters after they were done. Starting with Jason, let's hear how those went.
All right, Jason, I'm very excited to talk to you again. You were on the podcast not that long ago, and you're back.
In fact, if I recall, we did an entire podcast about me. That was wonderful. And I assume this is part 2.
Yes, that is absolutely the case. So when you were on last, we kind of talked about the future of OneDrive, and we are talking right after you walked off the stage for the future of file management in OneDrive. How are you feeling?
I'm feeling great. It's always fun when we put these together because you kind of spend a lot of time working hard to get the right moment and all the engineering work we've done in the background, the storytelling to help people understand what we're doing, and then kind of seeing it all come together. I'm at a moment where I'm filled with a lot of hope for how people will receive that, how they'll understand it, what they'll get excited about, and really curious for the kinds of things people want to see and where this will take them next. I think we're going to learn a lot from everyone who uses OneDrive and who's interested in OneDrive, seeing how this is received.
Yeah. So when you were on the podcast, you kind of teased some AI type things that might be coming to OneDrive. And we just spent a bunch of time talking about that. So let's start with how we're bringing AI into OneDrive today.
Sure. So there are a couple of different ways, especially when thinking back to that previous podcast, which I hope everyone listened to. And if you didn't, go back and do. But, a couple of different ways that we think about it. First is really, what are the things that AI is going to help with? And we really think that a big part of what AI helps with is removing kind of the drudgery of life, the things that are repetitive or boring, or they require a lot of attention, but they're not particularly engaging. And this is where AI can really scale up what you do and do it very efficiently. In the case of Photos, as we just showed, and is just rolling out now in a limited preview for people, is the ability to find and organize your folks in Photos, be able to say, hey, this is, mom, this is, my best friend, and be able to see all the photos of them across that, have that automatically done by AI. In the case of our new search technology and the semantic understanding that we've built over photos, the ability for us to be able to say complex phrases and sentences and describe what you want, a memory you want to recapture or a set of photos you want to see together. Being able to do that is another one where, sure, you could browse through all of your photos and try to find all of them and remember them yourself, or we can just do it for you. And it's amazing what in a couple of seconds you can pull back, whole sets of your life and really relive those moments. And that's kind of, the obvious stuff I think in photos for a lot of folks. When we talk about documents, you get into scenarios like being able to get simple, clean, fast summaries of those, but not just of a document like we've seen in a lot of cases, but summarizing a whole set of documents. For our listeners, especially, at the folder or the document library level, being able to say, what does all of this mean? What should I take away? Sure, you can go read all of those things. That's a feature we've always had. But it's certainly powerful to be able to quickly say, hey, is this the right set of content? Is there something missing? Be able to ask questions of all of that. But what really excites me that we just went through is being able to use AI to take that and a semantic contextual understanding of the content and do interesting things with it. So not just saying, hey, here's a set of search results that are a little bit smarter, a little bit more clever, but being able to say, hey, we understand why this set of content is together, and you can put it together in a folder, and then we can continue that understanding and be able to suggest new things, be able to think on behalf and really co-create with you. The reason we really love the word co-pilot is it implies all of that capability working for you and with you, keeping you kind of in the center, but letting you focus on the most important tasks as you work with it. So I'm really excited about all of those pieces. And they, I think form the groundwork for the next generation of what we will do with content. Often we talk about how much there is, how many billions and billions of files are uploaded every day or edited or commented or shared or, interacted with. And those numbers are huge and big, but they kind of hide the fact that behind all of those things is meaning. Behind all of those things is intent. And with AI, we're able to extract that and use that to operate at a new level. And it's not just move, copy, update, rename, delete. It's actually able to do something that has an understanding and set of context that is meaningful to you in your work, in your personal life with all of that content.
No, that is such a great description of just some of the things we're talking about now, which doesn't even get into what we can do in the future as we build all of this. So yeah, thank you for taking the time, and now enjoy a nice pat on the back. You're done, and we can go on to building great product.
When do I get hair and makeup?
We got it there. Yeah, Arvind, I think the number one thing that really came through when I was talking to Jason, as you heard, was just he was beyond excited to see how people were going to react to all of these amazing features. In particular, you heard like the stuff we're doing with AI, like Jason really likes to use that phrase, removing drudgery, just comes through so cleanly. And all of the demos, all of the things he talked about, like it is very clearly a platform for the future.
I think getting rid of the drudgery, like, the stuff that he showed, I would say, like in the show, and then he talked about later, like you can actually believe those scenarios, right? Like those things that like are that he showed and you guys talked about, like they are right around the corner, and like they're not so far off to where you imagine like you're watching some crazy futuristic movie. It's like, I believe that OneDrive is going to be able to like make it super easy for me to search, or make it super easy for me to like just catch up on stuff that is just floated across my virtual desktop. I, for one, am excited as well.
The thing I loved most about the way Jason described it is, it's all grounded in what is our users' needs? What do they need to do? What are they trying to accomplish? It's not just the fancy AI vaporware demo. Like those are real scenarios, like I said, that you can picture yourself using, like, oh man, Arvind, we're talking with Sesha a little bit later. I need to understand all the different security features that are available in the product, and being able to search like, hey, tell me about the security features that Sesha works on, and have it bring in all those documents, all those specifications into one place. Let me add them to a folder. Just feels transformative.
The way you just said it was like so much more eloquent than what I was trying to say. So thank you for that. I, for one, am looking forward to using, say the document summary feature that Jason was talking about, right? Like how much content are you in your daily life, Stephen, like completely flooded with, like in any
more more days than I would prefer. Let's say that.
I love how, Jason's just like, we're going to just make it super simple for you to like click on that document, see if it's important to you. And then if not, like get rid of it or, not have to open it at the very least. Okay. So now, Stephen, the next person that you interviewed was Arwa. And I think she had probably the longest demo, but it was also the one that had like the most features. It was like features were flying at you fast and furious. So let's hear how that interview went.
All right, Arwa, we are here right after the October event. How are you feeling?
I am excited. We have had such a fun time putting this work together, putting this product together for our customers. And I'm really pumped to hear back from customers and how they received it all.
It's feeling the same way. I would really want to know what the reaction is, how people are feeling about it. So for folks who may not have caught it, you talked a lot about OneDrive Home, which we talked about on the podcast. What are some of the big improvements that we've added to the product?
Yeah, we have a ton of improvements. The ones that I talk about are a lot about how do we enable you to get back to your files faster. Internal to our OneDrive team, we think every day about what does it take to improve time to file. That's our internal metric. Reduce the amount of time it takes to get back to that file that you might be looking for. And so towards that, we've introduced a few different views that can really cater to how you think about getting back to your file. For example, I might be looking for something. I might not remember the file name. I might not remember specific details about it, but I might remember, it was Gaia who shared it with me. Or, I was in a meeting with Jason when I saw that file. And so we really wanted to cater to how people's minds work in that way and introduce new views to help users in that. So we have a new people view, we have a new meetings view, and one that I'm really excited about is we're soon going to be introducing a new media view as well, which is going to be a really cool way to get back to all of your photo and video assets that you use within your company. So really excited about those.
So one of the new features that you announced as part of this event, Arwa, was the Create New, the kind of big new flashy create button. Tell me more about that.
So we've worked really closely with our partners over in Office to bring the power of beautiful templates right into OneDrive so that when you're starting a new file in OneDrive, you don't really need to start with a blank slate. That can be intimidating to many people. And so we wanted to give folks a really cool and beautifully designed approach to kicking off their work. And so very soon we'll be releasing a brand new Create New experience from where you can choose to create a folder, a blank file, just like before, but also select from a host of new templates to get started with.
That sounds wonderful. The other one I'd be remiss if we didn't talk about at least a little bit, of course, is personalization, how we're making OneDrive feel more like yours, not just with the views, but some of the colors, shall we say, as well.
Yeah, this has been near and dear to our heart for a long time, and I'm glad this is the year we're making it real and bringing it to our customers. We put our heart and soul into even figuring out what colors we're going to pick. What are the right colors that will make, no matter what, users' content will look stunning when folks see it visually on the screen. And we also took to heart the personalization and colors being a form of expression. And so if I share a particular folder with you, Stephen, if I pick blue, that is a little bit of me expressing myself through that color. And so we wanted to make sure that when you see that folder, you see the color chosen as well. You see the blue. And a tiny bit of behind the scenes. Folks may or may not notice, but the team had a lot of fun with this feature as part of recording, in that we each selected a folder color to dress according to. And so we have a nice palette of colors here.
This is one of those favorite behind the scenes kind of things, because however much conversation you think there was around what do we wear for the event, there was way more who wears blue, who wears purple, who wears green. They all had to come through. So just to kind of finish this off here, when, if you didn't happen to catch the event, where are all these amazing OneDrive features? When will they be available for customers?
Good question. It's a little bit of a nuanced answer with more details in the blog post. A ton of the features that we've talked about today are already available on OneDrive Web, with a few coming over the next quarter. So we're really excited, and we'll make sure to call out when some of the newly announced features today will be available as well.
Great. Well, thanks for taking the time to talk to me today, Arwa.
Thanks, Stephen.
I think you're sensing a trend here, Arvind. Like the number one thing I heard from Aro was how pumped she was to just hear how people react to this. Like, we've got things like customer office hours. We've got the podcast. Clearly, like talking to customers is in the blood of the OneDrive team. That sounds slightly creepy, but it's fine.
We're vampires over here.
Exactly.
It's a Halloween show.
But yeah, just so excited to see how people are going to be looking at the product. Of course, Arwa walked through a number of the features that we've already kind of talked about on the podcast, things like the new OneDrive home experience. And really, like, again, you saw in all of those beautiful demos, just how clean and easy it is to find the files you care about, like trying to get to your files quickly, doing it in the way that makes sense to you. The people view is the one that like really stands out to me, that like, oh, I had this happen earlier today where I was like, oh, Arvind shared a file with me. I cannot for the life of me remember what that file is. I can't get to it the way I normally would. But you know what? Let me go to the people view. I look up Arvind and it's right there, and OneDrive has found my file for me. It's just phenomenal.
100%. I would say the people feature is like the number one go-to, sort of new view for me as well. But I gotta say, I really liked what Aura had to say about colored folders and personalization, because like who doesn't need, as she said in the show, a little bit more color in her life. I want my experience. I want my drudgery. Sorry, there's no more drudgery. We got Copilot. I want my OneDrive experience to be fun and personalized. What do you think about that? Colored folders.
Obviously a clear favorite. Actually, I think my favorite thing about colored folders right now was the amount of work that went into deciding, like, so if you noticed in the event, all of the speakers have shirts representing different colored folders, the colors that are available in the product. However much time you think was spent on like deciding who wore what color, it was probably more.
Right. Exactly. In fact, all of us like that were just watching the show being filmed. We were all like joining in the fun and also wearing our different colored shirts or what have you. I love how like Jeff was like, somebody must wear purple. Right. And like, cause we had to have some teams representation. Of course, somebody was going to wear blue as well, because we had OneDrive representation. So I think it was fun to see all of the speakers sort of get into like who was going to wear what color. All right. And so the last person that you talked to after they presented was Gaia. And she talked about a lot of stuff that I think, is going to help people be collaborative, not only like on a one-to-one basis or, through normal sharing activities, but also on an individual basis, like when they're on the go. Let's hear how that went.
All right, Gaia, I am excited to welcome you back onto the podcast, even though I think you were just here.
Thanks for having me again. It feels like yesterday that we recorded the last episode.
Yeah, it has definitely been a busy month for all things SyncClient related. So we're just talking after the Future of File Management event for OneDrive. Tell me a little bit. How did it go? How are you feeling about it all?
Yeah, it was super fun. I was definitely a little nervous going into the recording, but I'm feeling good. Have a lot of adrenaline and really proud to represent the work across the team that so many people worked on.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I was just sitting there watching. I did no work for it, but just watching you and everyone else kind of represent all the team's work and like an official production stage in front of thousands of people is just fantastic. So tell me a little bit about some of the things that we announced that you talked about.
Yeah, so we talked about the new simplified sharing experience, some of the new capabilities that bring the power of the desktop to the web. So like open an app. We talked about the performance improvements and also offline capabilities for the OneDrive web app. And then we talked about how we're bringing a lot of the experiences across Microsoft 365. So not just in OneDrive, but in Teams and Outlook and Windows, etc.
Yeah, I think that's one of my favorite parts of all of this is we talked about in the podcast, we talk about all these great performance improvements, new features, and then it shows up in Teams, it shows up in OneDrive Web. One of the things I thought was neat that I wasn't aware of before today was we're bringing OneDrive into the Outlook app as well. Why don't you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, we're super excited to bring OneDrive into the Outlook experience so that you can easily access and share files right when you're working in Mail and Calendar.
Yeah, so Gaia, you mentioned kind of offline access. Can you tell me a little bit more about like what sorts of scenarios does that enable? How are customers going to experience that in their day-to-day business?
First off, if you're offline now with the power of Sync, you'll be able to navigate through the OneDrive web app and it'll continue to work even if you're offline. So you can move files around, you can sort things. all of those operations work. And then if you also have the files available on your machine or have marked them available offline from the web app, you'll actually be able to open them and edit them. And then when you're back online, those changes will sync back up to the cloud.
Yeah, that is a great set of improvements. Well, thank you for taking the time, Guy. I really appreciate it. I know today's been a busy day for you.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
Guy especially was representing work from just across the entire team, from the sync client and the OneDrive desktop experience to all of our offline features, to the share dialogue, to how OneDrive shows up inside of Teams or how it shows up inside of Outlook. She was just so proud to represent all of the team's work. I mean, it's probably one of the unspoken things that hopefully you sense as you're watching the event is just like Jason, Arwa, Jeff, Sesha. They are representing the work of thousands of PMs and engineers and designers. It's just so great to see.
What struck me about like some of the features that Guy showed was that like some of them are like at first blush, they're sort of in the weeds, right? You think about like, the offline mode that she showed. And until you actually like picture yourself like on a plane or like in a low bandwidth sort of situation where like, yeah, you're not going to miss a beat with the files that you most care about. Like it's just going to all automatically work. And, you'll be none the wiser as like this thing is sort of in the background, just sipping data due to a low bandwidth connection or no connection in some cases. So I liked how Guy brought all of that to life in her talk.
Yeah, I think one of the things that surprised me, you heard it in the interview, is the OneDrive and Outlook piece, which feels like such a natural pairing. Like, we talk about OneDrive spanning your life, whether, like you're saying, low bandwidth situations on your device, on your phone, in the cloud, but just making it so that it spans and is available and easily accessible from Teams, from Outlook, whether you're working on email, in your calendar, in your chat, in your channels. Making sure you've got easy access to your files is just so core to what we do. And it was just great to see.
I mean, 100%. Don't forget about Windows as well. I mean, some of that great benefits coming to Windows. And we know a lot of our customers like to use OneDrive through the File Explorer. That section of the interview and then also of Guy's talk, just like to me, just brought home like how in sync Microsoft as a whole is from a company perspective. Like being able to have like one view, like this is the way you find your files, I thought was like super, super interesting and super awesome to witness as one of the teams that's contributing to One Microsoft. So anyways, with that, I think we got to get on with the rest of the show. So Stephen, what's next?
All right, so let's move on to our next topic. So obviously kind of Jason, Gaia, Arwa all talked through a lot of the amazing features we announced at the Future of File event. But there is an area that we missed, and we haven't actually talked about it on the podcast yet. So that's why we have Sesha here to talk about security and governance inside of OneDrive. So Sesha, let's just kind of start high level. When we think about security and governance, like what does that mean to admins? Why should they care? Why should they continue listening to what we're about to talk about?
Oh, absolutely. I would say when you look at OneDrive, it's the file storage for all files that you're bringing in from anywhere, right? And one of the fundamental thing about files is collaboration. Like you collaborate on a given document with your colleagues internally, as well as with colleagues externally, right? External users that you're collaborating with. And that's how you get your job done. And in my view, security starts right there when you are sharing a document with both internals and externals. You got to be aware of the fact that who you are sharing with, right? Let's just start simple one. Sometimes you might type in Stephen Rice, but you might pick a wrong Stephen Rice and then share it with that person instead. That's what we call it, accidental sharing with someone else that you're not, intended to share with. But then also you run into another security problem, which is oversharing, for example, right? You may end up sharing with a security group without realizing that security group has 100,000 users in them, right? So that's another potential aspect of your sharing activity that may result in a security problem, which is unauthorized access now is granted for those particular documents, right? And not only that, I'm sure listeners, you work on confidential documents, and sometimes you start them right there in your OneDrive, You flag them as confidential document. However, just to make sure when you share that with the internal user or external user, they are indeed using appropriate mediums or endpoints to access those documents. Like you don't want somebody in the airport kiosk machine, right, try to access that particular confidential document because it might leave behind some caches and the cache of the copy actual file in the machine itself. So you got to be careful ensuring those confidential documents are accessed appropriately from a right set of devices or even right set of IP addresses. So that's where security is just fundamental in every activity that you do with the files.
Yeah, it's one of the great challenges, I think, of IT in general, is you've got to balance this. Let my users get their job done. They need to collaborate. They need to work. It needs to all just happen. But on the other hand, I have to make sure that they're doing it securely and safely and that we're not leaking data or opening ourselves up for abuse. And that's where you and your team and all of those great features come into play.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Excellent. So I want to talk about one of the really cool things that you showed off at the recent event. This idea that you've got a lot of people. You have some people that share a little bit. You have some people that share a lot. And with the people that share a lot, they're probably, or they could be more apt to do some of that oversharing or incorrect sharing. How would me, if I was an IT pro, I'm going to feel bad for that company that hires me as an IT pro, but if they did, how would I stay on track of how sharing and collaboration was going to be happening across my OneDrive, across my end users' OneDrives, across my organization?
Yeah, great question. I can tell you the controls I'm about to talk about, Arvind, if you learn all those controls, I'm sure you will make a good IT pro.
No. Third career, I think I can see that coming.
I know some folks at Microsoft that might disagree, Arvind, but
So great question, Arvind. Actually, on the serious note, the way that we look at collaboration and helping admins to realize, are the right set of collaboration patterns are happening in their organization or not. We have a new insights now, so we call it Collaboration Insights, as part of our advanced management add-on capability. Now, what it does is it actually looks at across your organization as the collaboration, as the sharing happens, and then it is able to, as an IT admin, provide you a list of here are the top collaborators across the OneDrive accounts that you have. And let's say, Sesha and Arvind are the top collaborators. Now, the question is, what does it mean by top collaborator, right? You might wonder. Well, it just means that they are either sharing a lot of activities, a lot of files that are sharing, both internal and external, or perhaps they are creating the highest number of, I think you all know, and listeners also will know, in OneDrive, we have the concept of company shareable link. So they are the ones who are creating highest number of company shareable links and linking to documents and then sending that across to other people. Or it could be anyone sharing links. They are the ones that are creating highest number of anyone sharing links. And they are the ones creating external shareable links as well. So that's how we look at the whole population across all the users in your organization and then bring that concise list of here are the top 100 top collaborative users. Now, what do you do with that information? Well, once you know those are the top collaborative users, then you can look at it and say, okay, for the role that they play in a given organization, is that appropriate actions that they are doing, right? And if you think that, they are working in, let's say, marketing team, and they do expect to work with external users and hence are creating these company shareable links, so it's okay. But on the other hand, if somebody who's working, let's say, in a specific research team that is meant to be, scoped collaboration, it is not meant to be a broader company-wide collaboration, but then that person is creating many of these company shareable links. Guess what? You probably have to go and figure out, okay, what's going on in that particular aspect of sharing. That's how we are helping the IT pros. And not only for, I would say, specifically files itself, we actually do this for even SharePoint sites as well, which is, as you all know, OneDrive is built on top of SharePoint. So,
yeah, that's just such an awesome feature. Like, It's the type of thing we hear a lot from admins. They're trying to understand. They've got this wealth of data available to them in audit logs. They've got hundreds, thousands of users, but being able to pull actionable insights out it can be so difficult. And that is where I think the kind of collaboration insights you're describing, Sesha, really shine, because it's, hey, Arvind is sharing a ton of files with people outside the company. Arvind's working on 10 projects. Maybe that's not right. Maybe I need to go have a conversation with Arvind and figure that out. And the fact that the advanced management SKU pulls that information out and lets you see that, interact with it, is just phenomenal.
I actually do have a technical question about like the insights feature, but like it's not only like the number of links that somebody might be sharing or the amounts of sharing somebody might be doing, but I would imagine like the amount of data somebody might be sharing might be an important thing to think about as well, right? Does Collaboration Insights account for that as well?
And when you just on that note, Arvind, when you say amount of data, do you mean like number of files or the size of the file?
It could be number or size. Yeah, I just think about like, if you've got as a risk to an organization, if you've got somebody sharing like whole database files or raw data and whatnot, that could be, kind of a risk if you worked in, say the pharmaceutical industry or something like that. Right?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we have the version 1 already out as part of the private preview. And what that does is the number of files. That's what it is to provide the insights. And we are also now looking at, as we look at the next semester and so on, what is the kind of file it is, whether it is a video file or PDF file, the large size. And to your point, absolutely right. We need to be able to give that insight as well so that you can decide is that sharing is appropriate or not. So both file type and the size of the file is the next set of, I would say, attributes that we are planning to look at as part of the Collaboration Insights. Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense. I mean, I guess like once you have, if you're an organization, once you've identified customers or your end users that are operating in a sensitive area, like what kind of tools at that point do I have as the IT pro to ensure that their data is being shared in an appropriate way or with the right people and so forth?
Yeah, absolutely. Like this is what I was referring to earlier. The confidential documents do start in OneDrive, and as Stefan was earlier saying, we want to make sure the productivity of the user doesn't get degraded, right? Because often there is this perception that, hey, when I add some security controls or features, it's going to put barriers in the user's productivity. But our principle is actually the opposite. We want to make sure that it is fine-tuning the access that the users have to their product and to the documents. And as and when only they access the confidential documents in their OneDrive is when they actually are getting prompted for additional information, because now they're accessing the confidential. So we should be able to, we ask them to, hey, make sure you are in the right managed device you are using, or perhaps you are getting authenticated with what we call multi-factor authentication. So imagine that, Arvind, you have some confidential documents and we know that it's in your OneDrive. So when you could be working on Teams, chatting with folks in your colleagues and so on, no problem, or in some SharePoint site and so on. But the moment you come and try to access the OneDrive document, that's when you get prompted. Arvind, you're trying to access confidential document, please do multi-factor authentication, which is you get a one-time passcode, or you can use the Microsoft Authenticator app, however your admin has configured. And that will ensure that it is actually Arvind who's accessing the confidential document. Now, the beauty here is it's not about just you, because you are the document owner. Most of the time, you probably have a lot more understanding of what is confidential document means working at Microsoft. Whereas if you share that with an external users, they are working at some other company, or perhaps they are a freelance consultant, but they probably don't have that same level of rigor potentially, right, for the confidential documents. That's where setting these kind of policies, they will also get prompted and say, hey, you are trying to access a confidential document shared by Arvind. You do need to run through the multi-factor authentication, at least as one-time passcode, and then they will be able to access it. Now, going back to my earlier point, if they're accessing from kiosk machine, for example, right, we need to ensure they go through that additional layer as well. So that's how we are helping IT Pro make sure their security guidelines are able to, they're able to meet them. but at the same time, from an end user perspective, on demand, provide these security additional requirements.
Yeah, that's just all phenomenal.
Yeah, I mean, I was just going to say, like, just to summarize, it's like I could be in sort of a protected state. I like that. Like, so it's like I might be creating documents, but because of the where I actually work within an organization, it like say it's a sensitive department or something, I might be sharing documents here and there, and then if Steven tries to access a document, he might not be in the same department. It's like because I have this policy around everything I sort of create. Steven ends up having to use this higher level of authentication to get to my stuff that I create. Basically, that's pretty neat.
I especially appreciate, Sesha, I felt like I'm going to pat ourselves on the back here a little bit, but like just the end-to-end life cycle that we've built where, understanding if your device is managed and whether, like you said, if it's a kiosk machine in an airport versus the laptop provided to you by IT, one of these things is more secure. And being able to, like I said, not get in front of the users when we don't need to, but making sure we're like providing security when we do is just an essential part of, I think, the Microsoft 365 story for file access. One of the other features you had talked about as part of this kind of future of file management event was the new kind of restricted access control features. So restricted access, very scary sounding thing. Tell me a little bit about that. What is this kind of new feature that we're announcing?
Yeah. It's actually not that scary as it may sound. Let me give you a concrete example there, which is, as I mentioned earlier, you have a document, let's say regular documents, and you have ended up, let's say, sharing with a security group. And what happens, that security group, as I said, is actually Microsoft full-time employee all, which is like 200,000 people. You probably have accidentally just shared with the security group, potentially. Or perhaps you picked the wrong security group when you were assigned to select, right? So now the file is out there, accessible by all these employees, right, of Microsoft. So that's what we call oversharing. And it's a very common problem, very, very common problem across all our organizations. And it's because it's human nature, right? You just want to get your job done when you're trying to share something and then keep moving on to the next thing. When we have these insights and we provide the capability to admin say, hey, here are the potential overshared OneDrive accounts, and they will be able to, using the collaborative insights I talked about earlier, now you will be able to pick the specific OneDrive account. Let's say I'm just going to pick on Arvind's OneDrive account here.
It's always Arvind.
I can't always picked on.
Get that OneDrive account. Now I can apply this restricted access policy, meaning I know that Arvind is working in this sensitive department, a specific department users. I know that. And I know some of the external users that he usually interacts with. So I'm going to create the security group that includes both the departmental users and these external users that he typically collaborates with. And then I'm going to apply that as a policy on his OneDrive. Now, what that means? It means that only those users that belong to that restricted access control group are the ones can access the documents that are inside Arvind's OneDrive. That means that sharing link he sent out to 200,000 plus employees, even though it's out there, none of them can get in. Only those users that are part of that restricted access control policy are able to now get in and access that document. So that's how powerful it is, because every time when the oversharing happens, and it's usually an incident that IT has to go deal with, and usually it takes a lot of time to know who has access, where did it go wrong, and then try to go remove those permissions. It takes a lot of days, sometimes in months, right? Whereas with this policy, within a matter of minutes, you can get this under control and mitigate the problem. Then you continue on with cleaning up your permissions as needed as well for that particular OneDrive.
I really love this, Sesha, because we've all seen those incidents where a customer has reached out and said, hey, I've got an oversharing incident. I had a user who messed up. What do I do? And it's difficult. Like you said, it can take months to unravel those pieces, figure out how it got overshared, figure out who got access that wasn't supposed to. And I love how I'm going to use the fancier name, RAC, the restricted access control policies, which sounds...
Yes, RAC policy.
Yeah, see, it's way cooler. But just that ability to draw a circle, these are the people that Arvind actually needs to collaborate with. This is his working group.
Yeah.
I've now guaranteed there is no oversharing happening on Arvind's OneDrive. I still need to spend some time to unravel the permission issues, to make sure that I can lift the policy potentially in the future or whatever it might be. But the ability to just draw that circle super easily. Arvind's OneDrive is now secure. And I can take the time. I can do my investigation. I can unravel the pieces, figure out how it happened, figure out how to prevent it next time. Just feels super powerful.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, speaking of RAC, I'm just going to throw it out there. Feel free to cut it off if you don't like it, Stefan. Okay. My team is really good at 3-letter acronyms. Okay, RAC, SAM, CAE is the other one, right? Because in security world, as we build up all those controls, we love acronyms.
Everything is a 3-letter acronym.
3-letter acronym.
They're all TLAs.
I have to think about what TLA. They're what
3-letter acronym. TLA. Come on, Arvind, get with the times.
So slow today.
One other kind of new policy I want to talk with you a little bit about, Sesha. So we've had in product for a while this kind of block download permission where I can send a file to you, but you can view it in your desktop in your browser, but you can't download it. But I have a feeling that you're going to tell me about some cool new things we're doing around block download to make that even more powerful for users.
Absolutely. This is the one we don't have a 3-letter acronym, by the way, but we'll find something for sure.
BDP?
We haven't found a cool one yet, for sure. So one of the feedback that we have got from customers like you, the listeners, is that, hey, I am good, all the policies, controls you provide within the Microsoft 365 OneDrive secure ecosystem. That's great. But when I share with somebody, they can download that file. And the moment that file leaves the secure boundary of OneDrive, now it is sitting in their local devices, desktop or any device that they use. Then you kind of, from that point onwards, you actually don't have any control over that file, right? So that's the feedback that we got from the team, from the listeners and the customers. So what we have introduced now is you can configure the block download policy on a given user's OneDrive. And what that means is the owner of the OneDrive, which is the user itself, they can definitely do all sort of things with the files, no problem. They can download because they own it is their OneDrive, so they can do all the activities on the files. However, when you share a file with someone else, be it an internal user or an external user, they can view the file in the context of the web experience and then work with that, no problem. However, if they go try to download it to their local device, that's when they get blocked immediately. So that is one new policy control that we have brought together. And this is more important, especially for, let's call it like high profile users that you may have in your organization, where they do share things with other external folks or internal users. And you just want to make sure those strategy documents or high value documents are actually kept inside Microsoft 365 security boundary with OneDrive security boundary. So that's the control, Stefan, the block download policy control. Follow up on that, we're also, if we can, sometimes the teams make meeting recordings that you have in a given team meeting. Those get stored in OneDrive. And we also got feedback from customers that, hey, I want to allow the sharing and downloading of other files, but not Teams meeting recording files, because those typically have other sensitive content there. So we do have a specific control for that too.
Gotcha. So you can block specific file types. That's pretty cool. One of the last features that I think that you demoed at the event was I think is really cool. As somebody that worked at a company that went through an M&A type scenario, I could see how this would be.
No, don't use the acronym. What is M&A, Arvind? You got to at least put it out there at least once so people know what you're talking about.
As somebody who worked for a company that got acquired by another company, I could see why our admin was ready to rip his hair out when that was going to happen. So how is OneDrive getting better in these M&A or mergers and acquisition type scenarios? How are we making the admin's life easier there?
Great question, Arvind. Yeah, so mergers, acquisitions, and divestitures are part of every organization's day-to-day life. I mean, organizations do these activities either to expand their business or they want to divest out a certain part of their business groups so that they can focus on rest of the businesses, right? And it's a very common, in fact, Microsoft, we acquired LinkedIn, for example. So what we are doing here is like typically when you look at the M&A as a scenario, the biggest challenge is how do I now move users, in this case specifically users, OneDrives from one Microsoft 365 tenant to another Microsoft 365 tenant. And biggest news that we have today for you listeners is that we are announcing general availability of OneDrive cross-tenant migration. And what that means is, yeah, go for it.
It's super exciting.
You can now move OneDrive accounts from a tenant to another tenant. And all it takes is really one PowerShell in the SharePoint admin PowerShell module, which actually is called start SPO cross-tenant user move, rightfully, right? We are just moving a user from one tenant to the other. You just have to say, here is my source tenant, and here's the destination tenant where you want this OneDrive to land. And before you start this commandlet, make sure that user account is indeed created on the destination tenant. And then you kick off this move happens. You kick off the OneDrive account to get moved over there. But that's not the beauty part. There is another creative beauty part here. Number one, it's not like users don't have access when this has happened. Only for the window when there is a few minutes when the actual move happens, the OneDrive will be in the read-only window. But the rest of the time, it will be user will be able to access the OneDrive. That's number one. Number two, speed at which it gets moved. Like because we are able to achieve this in the service behind the scene from a tenant in M365 to another tenant, the speed is much, much more faster than what you can typically achieve in an app out there. The third main and more important one is you might wonder, we all talked about sharing links now, right? Well, what happened to those sharing links? Typically, when these kind of moves happen, when you move a OneDrive account from one tenant to the other, sharing links are broken. You got to go and reshare with all the rest of the sharers and so on, right? But we have now introduced a redirect feature as part of this M&A cross-tenant migration. What it means is the sharing links that you sent out a few months ago and so on, the old sharing links and bookmarks will just work.
That's great.
The way it works is you click on the link and then it just so.
You don't miss a beat. Like you basically your stuff gets migrated and you don't have to change anything about the way that you've been working, which is awesome.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, that is so cool. And I love how you just go through like, oh, you may be worried it's going to be slow. Don't worry. It's not. You may be worried links are going to break. Don't worry. They don't. Like just it's all there. Like, sometimes we talk about MVPs and like the minimum viable product. And this is just one of those cases where I feel like we didn't ship an MVP. We shipped a fully formed thing that just solves the things users are looking for. And I love when that happens.
Absolutely. And in fact, some of our early customers who have tried this out and they were blown away by the speed in which we were moving OneDrives across tenants now. So, and many times, I think as you all know, when you work with these mergers, acquisitions, or divestitures, there is always a timeline, right? A legal timeline that you want to be able to complete these projects and so on. So that's why the speed is really, really critical for them.
There's a timeline and an army of consultants that come in and try to help you do that.
Sometimes those mergers and acquisitions take like 2.5 years while you deal with all the other fun things that happen. Thank you, Sesha, so much for joining us and walking us through all these features. It was great getting to see you kind of, I was going to say perform. That's not the right word, but like speak to all this stuff as part of...
Present.
That's a much better word. For the Future File Management event. If people want to find and learn more about you, what's the best place to find you online?
First of all, thanks, Stephen and Arvind, for having me here. It was such a pleasure. And you can find me on LinkedIn, in/Sesha Mani.
Perfect. Yeah, got your name. That's always a plus. If you want to learn more about OneDrive and get the latest and greatest, you can check out our blog at aka.ms/OneDrive/blog. You can find me at LinkedIn at srice08 and Arvind at ArvindMishra1.
As always, we love hearing from you, our listeners. You can reach us on Twitter at OneDrive. And if you've got a question, please just tag it with #SyncUp. You can also visit our page links for resources and more at aka.ms/SyncUp. If you haven't already seen it, don't forget to go watch our recent event, The Future of File Management.
Yeah, there will be a link in the notes for sure. Check it out. There's a lot of amazing stuff and all the cool features that Sesha described you get to see in video as well. Don't forget to subscribe to Sync Up wherever you get your podcasts. If you enjoy Sync Up, if you find it useful, tell your friends. Word of mouth is the best way to get people engaged, help us grow the show. If you're curious about other Microsoft podcasts, check out aka.ms/Microsoft/podcasts. And as always, a huge thanks to Lisa for making this podcast possible.
Yay! Thank you for listening to Sync Up. We have been your hosts, Arvind and Steven, and we'll catch up with you next month. Woo-hoo.